Welcome to Mindset Shifts to drive your growth. This is one of my favorite workshops because it uncovers some of the things that control our lives, but that we so rarely think about. Of all of my workshops, this is probably one that I've done the most. I had one client with about 400 employees who said, we want every one of our staff to go through this, but we couldn't do it with 400 employees because they had a small room. So we did it, one by one with 50 people or so. So I'm excited to share this workshop with you all. And you all know the drill throughout the process. Stop me at any time if you have a question. Make sure that you have something to take notes on. And we will begin with a quick moment of gratitude. So I invite you, maybe for the first time today, to take a deep breath and be aware that you're taking it. Just one is all I ask. Take a quick deep breath with me. And I invite you to think about one thing that's going well for you in your life right now. It could be a big thing. It could be a small thing. What's one thing going right? And in order to keep us on track today, I would just ask that you share that in the chat so that I can keep us moving forward and keep us on time. So what's one thing going right for you right now? As we know, we're going to be more receptive to receiving new knowledge and new information whenever we've got a positive frame of mind. And particularly since we're talking about mindsets today, I think gratitude is a good one. So family's in a sweet spot, says Sam Whiteside, and Ellie's grateful for the short week and the long weekend that we just had. I know I'm grateful just for continued opportunities to get to participate with folks like you. I see Patrick joined us, who is new to the group. Patrick, welcome. We're glad to have you. We're just taking a moment here. Always like to begin these things with gratitude, something that's going well for you. Jean says friends and family are happy and healthy. Dr. Redwine says things are going right. Long-term plans are taking shape. I look forward to hearing more about those, Dr. Redwine. So our purpose for today is quite simple. Our purpose is to realize the power of the mindsets we choose. Choose is a very important word here because we do choose our mindsets, albeit unconsciously most of the time. So our reason for gathering today is for you to gain clarity on the mindsets that you choose on a regular basis. What that looks like is two components. I want you to become more aware of your mindsets, of how they affect your life, which are helpful, which are unhelpful. And I want you to walk away with at least one new mindset that you want to put to practice immediately after this session. We're going to go over 3 of them that have been really important for me as I've coached leaders and entrepreneurs and workers across industries. And I hope that you walk away with at least one. That's how you can hold me accountable today for doing my job. Here is the agenda. Oh, yes. And Ellie says we'll be sharing a PDF. Thank you, Ellie. Here's the agenda. We're going to talk real quick about the power of mindsets, just a really quick overview. Then we're going to gain some awareness over your current mindsets. We're going to do a reflection activity, and then we're going to learn 3 new mindsets, and each of them has an accompanying activity or application that I think you'll find really enjoyable. So I want to get us there. But first, let's talk about understanding the power of mindsets. So mindsets defined is quite simply a fixed mental attitude or disposition that predetermines your responses to and interpretations of situations. The reason why we say interpretations of is because, let's be honest, that's really all of it. So what we're talking about here is, let's pretend I'm delivering this presentation to you all, and all of a sudden I get interrupted by Patrick. Patrick's going to interrupt me. okay, and he's going to ask me a question. I could have a default mindset that anytime someone interrupts me, what they're doing is they're challenging my authority and they're questioning whether or not I know my stuff. If that's a default mindset, that's going to make me react to Patrick asking me a question in probably an unfavorable way. But let's consider this very same situation, me here presenting a presentation to you all, and Patrick interrupts and asks a quick question. But I've chosen to have a different mindset. And that mindset is when someone asks me a question about something I'm talking about, it means that they're curious and they want to know more of what I've got. It means that they're eager to learn from me. Very same situation, depending on the mindset that I've got, I'm going to react differently to that stimuli. So all of us walk around the world all the time, reacting to the outside world, unaware of the fact that the thing that we're reacting to often has nothing to do with what we're reacting to. It has to do with the mindset that we have chosen. So let's bring some awareness to the way mindsets ingrain themselves in our brain. And I thought that I would use this beautiful example of some surfers in Hawaii. So I'm going to show us a quick video to illustrate how we even get these mindsets in our brain anyway. Can you all see these guys with their shirts off digging? Okay, cool. So that's as crazy as it gets. Don't worry. Do y'all hear the audio? Do you hear the audio or no? Okay, well, it's Michael Jackson. I wish that you could hear that audio. Okay, so I'm gonna turn that off. So check it out. Here's these surfers. There's a point in the Pacific Ocean right along this beach, along the Waimea River, where there's a river that runs alongside the shore. What they decided to do is to dig a surf channel between the river and the shore of the ocean to see what would happen when these two bodies of water meet. So what began first as a little trickle of a stream, slowly over time is going to grow into something much more powerful. As you'll notice, the water begins to flow. Slowly but surely, with enough force and enough water moving through the channel. Okay, we did have like this little trickle of a stream. Now all of a sudden we got something that these people can jump in here and surf on. Next thing you know, like people are like full on wiping out on this thing. And then like we've got a serious surf like wave generator thing here where people are like having the time of their lives. Again, what began as a little trickle with enough force and enough repetition over time becomes this huge surf channel that people can ride their boards upon. So, what does this have to do with our mindsets? In our brains, we've got neural pathways that are firing all the time. Over the course of our lives, we have moved our thoughts back and forth across these neural pathways, and they have strengthened, creating defaults for our brains. So whereas in this surf channel, there was just a little trickle of an idea of a stream, over time, the more we use a mindset, the more we entertain an idea, the more we have a default reaction, the deeper the trench gets, until next thing you know, we can ride our surfboard on it, and our lives end up being really just a series of mental pathways and mindsets that we default to on a regular basis. This is what's happening in your brain. I want to bring awareness to the mindsets that started as a stream, maybe when you were younger, but have since broadened themselves. The good news here is, although we've got mindsets in our brains that are huge channels, like when you think about, man, I always react to my spouse that way, or anytime someone asks me a question, I always feel a sense of doubt, or anytime it's time for me to try something new, I always worry about whether or not I'm going to fail. I've got a default mindset that's keeping me down. The good news is our brains are adaptable thanks to neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. So imagine this group of surfers, after digging that trench on the beach, realized that this surf channel wasn't working for them anymore. All they have to do is pick up their shovels, walk 100 yards up the beach, and dig a new one. It might take a little bit, but eventually they would be able to broaden that surf channel wide enough for us to surf on again. Here's the catch I want you to get. Most people go through their entire lives, number one, not even aware that they had anything to do with the channel that they're currently in. And two, have no idea that all they have to do is walk up the beach to change their mindset or to change the channel that they're surfing on if it's not working for them. And then a little bit of inspiration before we bring some awareness to your mindsets. If you think about it, every good story is about changing our minds. Simba decided that he was going to walk up the beach and dig a new surf channel. After living in the jungle with Timon and Pumbaa for most of his adolescence and young adult life, he realized that his old mindsets of, I screw everything up, I'm only going to let my family down, I can't be depended on to be king because last time I tried, I ended up killing the person closest to me. He realized that those mindsets that were ingrained in him were no longer working. So he decided that he was going to have to change them. He was going to have to apply the power of neuroplasticity in order to fulfill the story that he wanted to live. I ask you to think about any good story. I ask you to think about your favorite movie. I guarantee you there is a point in the film where the protagonist, where the hero has to change their mind. And we all have the capability of doing this all the time. But before we can change our minds, before we can adopt some new mindsets, we need to take stock of the current mindsets that you've got. Before we can go dig some trenches in the beach to surf upon, we need to understand what we're working with. Number one of the most important things for the session today is awareness. So I invite you to think for a second. Feel free to write down on a piece of paper. Feel free to open up a new Word document that you can look at. What are some of your default mindsets? What are some of the deepest surf channels that you have in your brain? I'll give you some examples. They could be really small or they could be like really big and consequential. I think people should always be formal in their emails. I say hard work means that you're tired at the end of the day. If I'm not crying at the end of the day, I didn't put in work. If my hands aren't blistered, I didn't put in work. I believe that you should never or always let your kids do whatever. I'm convinced people from that company or neighborhood or that place, those people always do this. Or I don't think that I'm the kind of person who could be an entrepreneur. I don't think I'm the kind of person who is going to fall in love. I don't think I'm the kind of person who takes risks that way. Or I always trust someone until they prove me wrong. Think about some of the core mindsets that you have. If you're looking, if you're having trouble finding some, think about things that frustrate you in life. What rule are they violating? What invisible rule do you have about the world that people are violating? Or when you find yourself really connected to certain people, what collective mindset do you share about how the world ought to be, about how the world should be? I'll give us about 30 seconds. What are some default mindsets that you've got that run the show? And when you're ready, feel free to share them in the chat. I'd love to see responses from two or three of y'all. Ellie says one of hers is taking time to plan. Takes up too much time. So let's just start. I love it. Tobin says people are more important than processes. Love it. There's room for fun in everything. Our job shouldn't make it harder to do good work. Too much structure is a bad thing. +1 to Ellie. I love it. Sam says, I look for growth opportunities in almost every situation. We're going to talk about a mindset that's related to that, Sam. Hopefully you can help share some of your wisdom. So these are wonderful. These are all wonderful examples of default ways that we approach the world. Ellie says she doesn't want to stress people out by giving them more work or asking them to take on more responsibility. Here's what I want to point out about all of these responses. None of them are inherently good or bad. None of them are inherently right or wrong. What I want us to do is label the mindsets that we're coming up with as helpful or unhelpful. So I invite you to look at the mindsets that you wrote down and maybe write a H next to the ones that are helpful and a U next to the ones that are unhelpful. Because, I mean, let's consider. So with Tobin, there's room for fun in everything. I think that's probably overall a pretty helpful mindset, but not all the time. If you're being a pallbearer, I don't know how much fun you want to throw in to that situation. Or, you know, for instance, with
I mean,
Ellie
it depends
says,
on whose funeral it is, you know.
you're right. You're right, Tobin. Thank you. Thank you. I hope to be the kind of person who gives my pallbearers free reign to improvise. That's good. Ellie, you know, Ellie's last one in the chat, she says, I don't want to stress people out by giving them more work or asking them to take on more responsibility. This could be helpful in some situations if these are new hires who are being onboarded and they're drinking from the fire hose, and she wants to make sure that they don't get burned out too quickly before they can understand what's required of them. But this could also be unhelpful if Ellie is then working with a team of hers and she's then shouldering more of the responsibility than she needs to because she's got this persistent mindset that she doesn't want to overload people. Well, guess what? Every one of us is going to have to learn how to carry load at one point or another. So the goal here is not to tell you these mindsets you wrote down are good ones, these are bad ones. It's simply to bring awareness. I hope that each of you has written down your 3 or 4 or 5 defaults that run your life, and you're able to see where they are useful to you and where they are no longer useful. That is the goal. Goal number 1 is awareness. Any quick questions at this point? Before we move forward, I want to make sure everyone was at least able to capture, 3, 4, 5 mindsets that dictate their lives. Any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns there? I think I see a thumbs up. Okay, so this is mindset this is number 1. And just again, to illustrate how powerful this can be. For the most part, I believe that everyone's out to get me. I think that everyone's sizing me up all the time. And the sooner I was able to realize that as a default mindset, the sooner I'm able to wake up in the morning, know that that is something I default to, that is a deep surf channel that I've surfed many times, and then begin to build a different plan moving forward. This is what I hope for you. This is what I want to help you understand with more clarity. So here we are to the good stuff. Let's talk about some new mindsets to practice, and please interject throughout this process with questions, comments, or concerns. By no way is this the canon of best mindsets to practice, but after working with thousands of college students and several hundred entrepreneurs, these are the ones that I've seen to be most helpful. So here they are, along with some really, really sexy iconography, thanks to Ellie Worsham. Accountability mindset, the serenity mindset, and the opportunity mindset. These are the 3 mindsets that we're going to cover. And again, we will send out a PDF that's got these written out and has got a reflection practice for you that you can do on your own. Accountability, serenity, opportunity. Yes, we took some time to make sure that they all ended in a Y, so they kind of rhymed. Okay, let's talk about the accountability mindset. This mindset is for those of us who find ourselves experiencing a lack of motivation, a sense of stuckness, or low levels of productivity. Anybody ever felt that one? Have you ever felt like, my goodness, how in the hell am I supposed to get started? This is for us. The accountability mindset, the way that we start to think differently is when we practice the accountability mindset. It helps us focus on the locus of control. Our locus of control, those are the things that we have the ability to influence. There's a whole world going on out there, and most of us get anxious by thinking about the things that we can't control. But the locus of control are the things that we have immediate ability to influence. The accountability mindset helps us to stop sabotaging ourselves, helps us to stop doing the, okay, I'm going to, as soon as I check Instagram and as soon as I check my email one more time, oh, I should probably clip my toenails, then I'm going to start my work. We sabotage ourselves all day long. The accountability mindset helps us get down to the things that we need to focus on. And for crying out loud, it helps us feel empowered to start. The accountability mindset really begins by realizing that life is best lived in community, not alone. Life is best lived in community, not alone. I love what Tobin says. For me, this is I need the perfect Spotify playlist to be able to start writing this proposal. Yes. Or I should probably take out the trash. I need to call my mother. And you know what? I'm going to write a thank you note for a birthday present I got last year. That's what I'm going to do right now. Idiots. We can be idiots sometimes. So I don't know if you all know this by looking at me, but I'm not really predisposed to be the athlete kind of type of guy. I don't have a story that I tell myself about being really fit and having this like physical prowess. I was a late bloomer. And when I say late bloomer, I mean like I was in college before my voice started to drop. So I immediately, anytime I think about working out, I've got a story that I'm never going to be someone who does that. But all of a sudden, here we are in COVID, and I have nothing to do but avoid the work that I'm trying to accomplish. And I realized that I got to get some sort of a physical regimen going on. And there's this Nike training app that they started giving away workouts for free. And I realized that although I was so embarrassed about beginning a physical regimen, that if Ellie and I could team up to do this together, to hold one another accountable, and if I could just get a few new reps in to the idea that I can be physically active, then all of a sudden the story can change. But it's all about reps. It has nothing to do with perfection. It has everything to do with reps. Here's another example of this throughout the quarantine. I was a poetry major, which is probably why I wasn't an athlete to begin. I was a poetry major and I love writing poems. But you know what? It's been a long time since I've done anything with them. So I have the story that I'm a washed up poet is what I am. If anything, I'm a guy that went to college and got a degree in poetry, but I certainly haven't done anything with them. And I had no accountability to put anything out there. So Ellie and I were talking. I chatted with a couple of my other friends, and I realized that I needed some external accountability. I needed some other anchor point in the world to get me to engage with poetry again. But I was afraid to put my name with my poems. So we decided that I would create a nom de plume, or an alias to publish my poems with. So I went and I created a Medium account under a fake name. And over the course of the quarantine, I've published 70 something poems after having some sort of an external accountability mechanism that encouraged me to do it. And here's the deal. I cheated the system a little bit. But by practicing the accountability mindset, I realized that We are not in this life alone. And when we find ourselves stuck or lacking in motivation, what we need to do is we need to get out of ourselves. We need to get out of ourselves so we can get some reps so that we can tell ourselves a different story. After so many workouts, I tell myself a different story about my ability to work out. After so many poems published, I tell myself a different story about my status as a poet. I can actually say I'm a poet because what do poets do? Poets publish poems, and that's what I do. So here's the engagement for you all. I mean, consider the stories that you tell yourselves. I love this quote by Scott Turow. So who are we but the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves and believe? We get to pick the stories that we tell. And if we're not telling ourselves stories that are working for us, we need to get reps in a different direction. So here is the practice that I want us to put into place for the accountability mindset. It's called Begin to Win. For those of us who have a hard time starting, who feel stuck, who tell ourselves a story we can't do it, the reflection question to begin this practice is, what is something you can't seem to start, finish, or accomplish? And as a result, what story are you telling yourself? I invite you to think for a second. I'll give you 10 or 15 seconds. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? What's something you can't seem to start, finish, or accomplish? I won't ask you to share it publicly if you don't want to, that's fine. But as a result of not being able to finish or accomplish or start the thing that you so desperately want to include in your life, what story do you tell yourself? You know, for the longest time, I told myself, I'm a creative. I'm a creative. That means that I'm not an execution guy. I can do the creative work all day long, but I'm never going to be the guy that drives anything across the finish line. It's just not how my brain works. But by practicing the accountability mindset, I realized that I needed reps and I needed an accountability partner. I needed to remember that my life is not about me navigating it alone so that I could tell a different story. So based on the story that you're telling yourself, what if you started to tell yourself the opposite was true? I was working with a coach and he invited me to do this. He said, okay, so you're telling me that you're the creative guy, you're not the execution guy. Okay, for 1 month, I want you to operate as if you're the execution guy. You just ship things before they're ready across the finish line. That's what you do. You take ideas live. And guess what? After some accountability from him and after external reps, slowly but surely, I realized I can be an execution guy. Looks like Ellie shared something with us in the chat. She said she's wanting to initiate a new part of her business that she feels ill-equipped to execute, not knowing where to start. And so she chooses not to start at all. So she's telling herself this story that I'm ill-equipped to execute. So what if you started telling yourself the opposite was true, that you are equipped to execute? And what if you got an accountability partner that allows you to get reps in that execution? What if you ran an experiment for your execution? What if you did it on a small scale so that you slowly started to tell yourself, I am equipped completely to drive this across the finish line? Tobin, I'm going to go back and hear this. I failed to start a writing project. I tell myself I don't have time. Oh, this is a good one. And yet, think about all of the ways that we use our time. And you know, I forget the name of the philosophy. I need to remember it. But you know, it's the concept is the amount of time it takes to do something always expands the container of time which we give ourselves to do it. The amount of time it takes to do something always expands to fill the container of time we give ourselves to do it. And Zig Ziglar's got a great line where he talks about how we should always work as if we just won a free vacation to Cancun. Because guess what? If you want a vacation to Cancun and you had to leave tomorrow morning, I bet you get a lot of your shit done before then. So it all has to do with the story that we tell ourselves about the time that we've got. All we need to do then is to get an external accountability partner and to get more reps, realizing that we can be more efficient with our time than we actually are. Gene dropped something in the chat. I have a hard time incorporating a life balance into the amount of time I spend working. I tell myself that graduate students are supposed to pay their dues and that this is normal. I love this, particularly, Gene, when we look around and we see everyone else doing it, we say, well, this has to be normal. Like this is the way that things are. But I guarantee you, the second someone starts living their life a little bit differently, that can become a new normal. But it happens only when we have someone to help us hold us externally accountable. And when we get reps realizing that it is possible to live a different way so we can tell ourselves a different story. What would it look like, Gene, if you practiced a 6 hour, I'm saying six, only six, a 6 hour device free Sabbath on Saturday, where you just like totally gave up on everything but taking care of yourself? Slowly, over time, you're going to realize the world isn't going to fall apart and I'm not going to fail graduate school. Oh, I love this. I'm going to read one more and then I'm going to move us on. Thank you guys for participating. This is what makes these sessions work. Patrick dropped in. Patrick's starting a surf wax company, and I got to show a surf video and use non-surf term lingo. Patrick, I'm sorry for any bad surf words that I said. So Patrick's starting a surf wax company after failed prototype. He tells himself, I'm not a chemist. I can't come up with a working formula, and that there are too many hurdles. This is a tough one. I'm not a chemist. This isn't me. This isn't in my DNA. I can't come up with a working formula. And slowly that mindset is going to close off every potential opportunity. But we're going to believe that mindset because we've started surfing that channel, because it's helped us stay safe. What does it look like, though? To find an accountability partner to help you realize that what you need more than anything is reps, to take things lightly and to ship ideas before that you think they're ready, so that you're able to realize that the hurdles are going to continue to come, but the progress will build over time. The accountability mindset is 4 practices that I want you to think of to get an accountability partner and to get as many reps as possible. So to begin to win in the accountability mindset, step number 1 is I want you to partner up. Who is someone that you can check in with on a regular basis? And for Patrick, that might not be that you've got a chemist friend. It'd be nice if it was a chemist friend, but it might just be someone to remind you that the most important thing for you to do is to stay in the ring. The most important thing for you to do is to come up with the next mix of your wax. And then we need to optimize. If we find ourselves putting off work that we don't want to do, that often has to do with us trying to jam it into periods of time that we are not going to be able to accomplish it anyway. Do you find yourself more productive in the morning? Do you realize that you're going to be more productive if you're collaborating with a group of people? Or do you need to be someone who starts on paper alone, then you share it with the world? Bring some awareness to when you are most equipped to navigate something that's hard for you to do, and schedule it during that time. The easiest way to silence a false story is by calling it out. So make sure whenever a false story that you're not a chemist arises in your brain, that you call that out and just simply say, I'm telling myself that negative story again. And then lastly, just as we're calling out the stories that you tell yourself that aren't true, I want you to follow trends that are. Keep data points to prove your negative stories wrong. You know, I've done 65 something workouts since COVID started. The second I start to tell myself that I'm not an athlete, I've got data to back it up. I've got 70 something poems that I've published since COVID started. The second that I start to tell myself I don't deserve to put words on the page, I've got data to change my mind. Make sure that you're capturing the data to allow yourself to stay grounded in reality and to stay focused on what needs to be done. This is the accountability mindset. Any quick questions? I need to move us forward. I love the engagement. Thank y'all for digging in. That is what makes this work. Okay, Ellie's telling me I gotta move this train down the tracks. Okay, here's the serenity mindset. Oh, I love this one. Okay, anyone experience nerves and anxiety? Anyone worry about what other people think? Anyone have negative head noise? Oh man, Tobin's giving me jazz fingers. The serenity mindset allows us to silence negative voices, quiet anxious thoughts, and to feel a sense of peace. First things first, we've got to notice when we are anxious. That awareness is the key. To illustrate the serenity mindset, let me present to you a brief scenario that maybe I experience, and tell me if you ever experience anything like this. Maybe we'll have something in common. So do you ever wake up in the morning and your head's on your pillow and you look up at the sky and you think to yourself, today's going pretty well. Nothing's necessarily gone wrong yet. But right as you think to yourself that the day might go a direction of your choosing, you forget that lurking in the shadows underneath your pillow is your phone. And so instead of continuing to set a positive intention for yourself, you think, well, why don't I go ahead and ruin my life and take a morning scroll? So you get on to take your scroll and you see that, oh, Janine's at the gym early again. I haven't gone to the gym ever. And then you see that Paula is posting a trip from France from 3 years ago. She's one of those people who posts a picture from a vacation 3 years ago and be like, just missing Paris today. And you're like, Paula, I hope you get coronavirus. And you get frustrated. And so the second you go into the shower, you've got this mindset of comparison. So now you're in the shower and you think, well, if I'm in the shower, instead of really enjoying this time, you know what I might do? Is I might go ahead and think of all the things that could go wrong with my day to day. And I might think about a couple of arguments that I might get in with my mother who wants to have another Zoom call, even though we had one on Saturday. And I'm going to craft out the winning argument so that I'm going to be prepared for my day. And then you walk outside and you go to get something out of your car and you see a neighbor walking by and you wave at them, but they don't see you and they have a face mask on. And so you don't know whether or not they just didn't see you or whether or not they mumbled something under their breath and they're frustrated at you because you haven't mowed your lawn in 2 weeks. And so now you're thinking about that right when you go into a Zoom meeting and you present a new idea that you've been working on that you're really interested in sharing. But after you share the idea, everyone just kind of looks at you and they stay on mute. And you don't know if they didn't hear anything that you said or if your idea really was that bad. And then you know that at the end of the day, there's the private Zoom meeting that everyone got invited to that you didn't get invited to, where all of your peers sit around and they talk about whether or not you're fulfilling your potential. Don't tell me I'm crazy. There have to be some pieces of that story that you relate to. And what that story is really about is a phenomenon that is so prevalent. There's a psychological term for it. It's called the spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is a phenomenon in which people tend to believe that they're being noticed more than they really are. And this is often, my friends, the root of our anxiousness. This is the opposite of serenity. This is the root of our fear. This is the root of our stress. We think that our peers are sizing us up. We think that we're being judged, and we think that we continue to fall short, and everyone's probably talking about it in one way or another. You know, we think that the world looks like this. All of our peers standing around saying, let me see what they're doing. Let me figure out a way to judge them. When in reality, we have to realize that this is actually what the world really looks like. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I should have given you that on the front end. I'm not licensed in any of that. So if there really is real anxiety, talk to someone about that. But I'm here to tell you right now that most of our anxiety is fabricated and imagined. Although it feels real to us, we have to realize that most of the people that we're nervous about, they're really not thinking about us at all. I love this quote by Olin Miller. You probably wouldn't worry about what people think of you if you could know how seldom they do, except for probably your mom or your auntie or your grandma. Like they're thinking about you right now, obsessively, too much. So the Serenity Mindset practice is called 4 Steps to Freedom. And there are some simple questions that you can ask yourself. So I invite you to think right now, where are you currently feeling any anxiety or fear in your life? Feel free to jot that down privately. You don't need to share it in the chat if you don't feel comfortable. Um, I'm taking these workshops live every week. Some of them I haven't done before. And I've done this one, but I think 2 weeks from now I haven't done before. So I feel a ton of anxiety and fear, even though I know how to facilitate workshops. What are people going to think if this idea in my head? What are they going to think if it's no good? I feel a ton of anxiety and fear about delivering a new project. Ellie says that she's about to have a career change and she's feeling a lot of anxiety about the future unknown. So much of our anxiety and fear we know is rooted in the past or in the present or in the future. So much of our anxiety and fear is rooted in wounds from the past or nervousness about the future, when the present is really the only thing that we have to handle right now. There's a great documentary on Netflix right now about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls called The Last Dance. And in the documentary, they say that they never met someone as present as Michael Jordan. That perhaps the reason why he was so successful was because he never thought about a shot that he had yet to take. He just didn't worry about it. He thought about the shot after he took it, and then he moved on to the next one. So where are you thinking about, where are you feeling nervous or feeling a sense of anxiety or fear in your life right now? And these are the 4 steps that I practice and that I use with people with whom I coach. Number 1, consider the probability. Again, I don't want to diminish any feelings of fear or anxiety by saying they might not be real. All pain is going to be real if it's sensed. But I do want to push us to change our mindsets from this is reality to this is a mindset that seems real. What is the likelihood your fears and anxieties actually come to pass? And then step 2, and this comes straight from Tony Robbins, believe it or not. In order to change our minds, we must change our physical state. More often than not, when fear and anxiety takes us over, what we need to do is think, are we hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? If so, we should probably move our body, eat a snack, talk to somebody, or take a nap. Okay, so if you're feeling overcome by a sense of anxiety or fear, step number 1, consider the probability. If you still think it might be real, then we got to move our body. Then if you think, man, that moving my body thing didn't help, we got to remember that our life is not meant to be done alone. We got to phone a friend who can help talk you through this and see more clearly. And if that one doesn't work, and if we think this thing really is as hairy as I think it is, unfortunately, there is no quicker way than confronting the issue. Sometimes we just have to have the hard conversation or get on the field and play scared. I will say this, for most people that I coach and with whom I work, the number 1 solution to any source of anxiety or fear in their workplace or in their relationships has to do with having the uncomfortable conversation that they don't want to have, where they share, this is how I feel. Can you tell me if the story I'm telling myself is true or not? And that's the right way to frame it. That comes from Brene Brown. In order to not blame people for how you're feeling, when you confront them, say, the story that I'm telling myself in my head right now is that lately you haven't thought that I've been making contributions that are worthy of me having this position. Can you help me understand if there's any truth to that? All of a sudden, the person with whom you're speaking is enlisted in helping you solve that problem. They're not blamed for making you feel the way that you feel. And if we can do these things, we can move ourselves toward the freedom of the serenity mindset. Let me move us on to our last one, and then I'll pause for questions at the end. Our last mindset is opportunity, the opportunity mindset. And man, I'm loving that iconography that Ellie got for us. So the opportunity mindset is particularly important for the season that we're in right now during these COVID times. I also love this. This calls back to Tobin saying earlier in the chat that he believes that anything can be more fun. So the opportunity mindset allows us to take the lemons that we've been given and try to find lemonade. This is nothing new, but I don't know who needs to hear this today, particularly because this is a season of hustle. This is a season of adaptation. Who's experiencing things that they don't enjoy doing? Who's inherited a new responsibility? Who's had to pivot and do something to make money that they didn't have to do before? Who's been surprised by the market to realize, oh man, the expectations that I had for my future are no longer happening? It can be easy to be frustrated, but when we practice the opportunity mindset, we learn to reframe obstacles. Some of you mentioned this was a default mindset that you had earlier. I believe it was Sam. The opportunity mindset allows us to recognize the importance of taking ownership and to realize that we always have the opportunity to add value. We just have to look hard enough for it. So this is my brother, Corbin, and this is his wife, Shannon. They like to match all the time. And this was on Valentine's Day, and we were out to dinner with them at Kirby Lane here in Austin, and it was a wonderful time. So the thing about Corbin is he is hilarious. He's one of the kindest guys that I know, and he's also got a case of intractable epilepsy, which means that he seizes, a dozen times a day. He can't be left alone. If his wife does leave him, he has to wear a helmet and stay on the couch and scoot on his butt across the room if he needs to get anything. They've had to modify their house to make sure that corners aren't sharp. And often if we're out to dinner for a meal, he'll have a seizure in the middle of the restaurant and, dinner's off. Many times if they're out shopping, he'll have a seizure and have to tell people not to call 911 and get him out to the car and get him home. And it normally knocks him out for, the rest of the day because of the toll on his brain. But instead of letting his epilepsy get him down, what they've done is they've turned it into an adventure. They have something that they call seizure bingo, where they keep track of all the places that he's had a seizure. So it's like Target, okay, now the Target parking lot, Target bathroom, the Target aisle with the coffee, Walmart, church, and now it's an adventure for them. For Christmas, they had shirts made that they match because they like to match, and they walk around with these shirts that say "'Tis the season," and above their kitchen, in their kitchen, above the kitchen table, it says "Seize the day." And Shannon, his wife, has actually started talking to members of the epilepsy community about finding joy and meaning in circumstances that we didn't sign up for. What a powerful way to think about our lives. In a much less meaningful way, but in one that might apply to us who have jobs. Out really quickly, I had a job with a consulting firm where someone got pregnant and had a baby and had to go on maternity leave. And they used to be in charge of the company newsletter. And I inherited the company newsletter, which is stupid. Company newsletters are stupid. And that means that people had to email me about their babies being born and their wedding anniversaries. And I had to copy and paste and take these dumb pictures of their kids eating Cheerios and send it out. And man, I was so frustrated. And I was complaining to my dad about it when one day he said, Reagan, or you could look at this as an opportunity and consider how you might make a unique contribution to this firm with the thing that you so despise having to do. That's what better stories are made of. Oh man, don't you hate it whenever your parents are wise and they're right? So slowly I started to try and make the Calypso connection something that was more engaging. And over time, I would write a letter from the editor about what it meant for us to be connected as a firm, even though we were a virtual firm and we never got to see each other. And that became the highlight of People's Fridays. And to this day, they still have an author of the Calypso connection. And it's a place where people feel connected, even though they're far away. Where can we take the things that are on our plate and turn them into ways for us to add our unique way of adding value to the world? I love this quote by Seth Godin in his book, Lynchpin. Perhaps your challenge isn't finding a better project or a better boss. Perhaps you need to get in touch with what it means to feel passionate. People with passion look for ways to make things happen. The whole book, Lynchpin, is about having the opportunity mindset. So for opportunity mindset, the practice that we want to put into place is reframe the game. And it's 4 steps of number 1, noticing the nuisance, bringing awareness, forgot a G there, bringing awareness to our frustrations is half the work of moving past them. Remember, awareness is always the first step. So what are you currently frustrated by that you have to do? What is on your plate that you're pissed off about? Name it. And that's part of the process for moving forward. Number 2, identify growth. How is this current challenge or frustration inviting you to mature? What teaching moment is there in this? And you know, the saying goes, what we resist persists. Oftentimes, the thing that we most don't want to do in our lives will chase us until we finally have to move through it. I love this part. Every one of us has a unique way of adding value. So what does it look like then to take the thing that you have to do, that you have to deal with or endure, and add your touch? What unique way can you navigate this challenge or unsatisfying task? How can you do it differently than anyone else and turn it into something that actually brings meaning? And then lastly, we got to show others the way, because it's easy for us to get down and it's easy for us to get lost. And if we can be the kind of people who take unsavory items on our plate and figure out a way to give them meaning and to add value, we can create workplaces, and we can be the kind of leaders that do that for others. That is reframe the game. So I invite you to consider, and then I'll open it up for a few questions. I invite you to consider, which of the mindsets might you be in need of right now? Maybe all 3 of them, or maybe a blend of the 2. Is it the accountability mindset? Do you need to remember that life wasn't meant to be done alone, and that we need reps to tell ourselves a different story about our capabilities? Do you need the serenity mindset? Do you find yourself with a nervous or anxious presence, worrying others might be sizing you up or judging your actions? Do you need to escape that by remembering that no one's really worried about you, so that you can stay in your lane? Or do you have something on your plate that you're not necessarily happy with right now? Do you have a challenge that you're having to go through? And perhaps you could navigate it with more meaning by applying the opportunity mindset. And with each of those, we've got the activities: begin to win, 4 steps to freedom, and reframe the game. You'll get a PDF with all of those so that you are reminded. I would love to open it up for any questions at this point. It looks like Ellie says all 3 currently accountability. She has a hard time asking for help. Tobin says he's most in need of accountability and opportunity mindsets. Thanks for the steps to reframe and the strategies to maintain accountability. I love it. Patrick says accountability is top for me, and then maybe opportunity is next. Man, thank you for participating there. I want to go ahead and let y'all know, Ellie's shot me a quick note. Number 1, if you want to stay afterward and hang on for a few questions, you can. I just want to make sure to end on time for those who have to go here at the top of the hour. But thank you. We do workshops like this every Wednesday through October, and you can get 25% off any of them with the September 9th attendee code.